Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Matt McClernon, CEO of Augment Code. I'm really happy to be joined today by Adam G., who is one of the founding engineers at Rubrik, a great Augment champion and also a good friend. So Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Of course, happy to be here.
Could you share a little bit about what your role is today at Rubrik? I mean, you've been there from the beginning, so give us some sense of what the scope of your focus is today.
Now I'm an engineering fellow. I do many things, wear many hats, but as it pertains to AI, I have three main focus areas. One is to help build AI into Rubrik's products. We have an assistant called Ruby and the sort of other AI initiatives internally for our product. Two is to help our customers use AI more securely and more efficiently. And so we have something called Rubrik Agent Cloud, which we just launched to help our customers adopt AI securely. And then third is to help sort of accelerate our internal productivity using AI, which is why we chose Augment.
Share with us a little bit about your background with AI. What we see with companies at a broad level across their teams as well as individuals is there's this arc that every one of us goes through, this progression with AI where maybe it starts with some skepticism or some curiosity, whatever it might be, and you grow more comfortable with AI, you grow more proficient, and you go from this place of sort of experimentation to really building with AI. What's your experience been like?
Yeah, I'd say I'd break that into two parts. You know, when ChatGPT was launched and generative AI became a very common word everybody knew. Obviously, that was like very incredible. People hadn't seen things like that before. At least I hadn't, and I feel like I speak for most people. And, you know, obviously it's very impressive, very interesting technology, but it seemed more like a parlor trick where, you know, it's sort of limited in its capabilities, is sort of prone to hallucination, you know, it's very impressive in some cases, sort of, you know, very ridiculous in others. So I think, you know, that was nice and interesting. And like, you know, it seemed like that was like a very important moment to sort of see that. But then I'd say part two is once the agents sort of came on the scene, I think that was a real game changer. And to see, you know, the LM operate independently for, you know, longer periods of time, accomplish real tasks in the real world, that was sort of a huge light bulb moment for me where I saw that this thing was really going to be super impactful.
Was there a moment you recall, maybe in this agent era, where you had this aha and you realized what the potential could be for agents that maybe like spurred you down that path?
You sort of started hearing about agents, you know, maybe early, I guess it was like 2025, something like that, you know, once sort of MCP and tools became more mainstream, but I didn't really grok sort of what it was and how it worked. So I'd say like really the aha moment for me was using Auggie for the first time, where I could just give it sort of the idea of what it was trying to do. And I actually watched it and you sort of inspect the code base, you know, make a plan, start executing, run unit test fails, fixes a unit test. I mean, that was like a real, you know, game changer moment for me. And I think that's when we started pushing a lot harder for adoption internally. We were Augment customers before Auggie and the adoption was fairly limited. There was a handful of very enthusiastic users who were able to get decent results. But I think once, not just myself, once any engineer saw the sort of capability and power of Auggie, the adoption shot to 100% has been there since.
We also have some familiarity, of course, since we work closely together with your code base. You guys have a pretty complex, large code base at Rubrik. Can you share a little bit about why Augment works better or more effectively for you and your teams on that code base versus other tools, and maybe what context matters?
Yeah, I mean, so clearly context matters. You know, if you try copy pasting in some code and asking an LLM to generate, you know, make a modification, it might be able to do a thing or two, but in terms of actually implementing a feature, like a larger scale project, it's going to need context from a lot more code than just sort of what you can pop into a prompt. And so I think having that retrieval engine, which is, you know, indexing the entire code base. Rubrik's a 12-year-old company, multiple product lines, like tons of features, lots of different platforms that we support. I think, you know, being able to find the relevant context quickly, you know, has a huge boost on performance of the agent itself.
You guys are well positioned in the security space as well also. And for us, as with Rubrik being an early customer, you've been a great design partner across the board with our product, especially with security enhancements. Mm-hmm. Could you share some perspective on why you and your team at Rubrik trust Augment from a security perspective?
I mean, you mentioned the context, but those are the two main sort of vectors for us that set Augment apart. One was, of course, the context engine, which operating on a large code base was important for us, but the other was security. And Rubrik is a security company. Our internal processes are very security focused, and it seemed like Augment was taking those concerns very seriously to the point where, you know, we were giving feedback and Augment was acting on it quickly, different types of things our InfoSec team was requesting, as well as the governance of Auggie itself. So making sure that we had the controls we needed to govern the tool calls that Auggie was making sure that Auggie was going to sort of abide by our own internal security policies. So I think all that feedback being taken and sort of working with you guys as a partner to make sure that we're doing, AI responsibly and governing effectively internally.
Thanks for pushing us too. We learned a lot through the summer.
Absolutely.
Especially working with you guys. You mentioned you've got a few different focus areas in your role today. Can you talk a little bit about what objectives you're after with AI for software engineering in each of those areas? Could it be things around productivity gains or time to market with products? How do you think about that for each of these areas?
I mean, we're still early on in our journey, but I think we believe in the promise of Auggie and this agentic coding experience where it's not just, 10 to 20% gains. We're expecting, 2, 5, 10x gains using agents to help develop software. The other areas we're looking at are around triage, sort of trying to reduce toil. And we're using Auggie internally for that as well, where, we've actually built a system where we can have Auggie sort of adopt a persona targeted for a specific task. And because it's already in our developers' hands, right on their laptop, already connected to our systems via tools, it's actually able to make great progress on other problem domains other than just coding.
And you mentioned a pretty big jump from single digit or double digit percentage gains in productivity to 2 times, 5 times, 10 times productivity gains. How are you guys tracking today along those targets? And then similarly, how do you think about it with toil reduction?
Yeah,
called out.
Totally. So 2 things there. I would say I think we're still early, and I think part of it's going to be identifying sort of best practices, working with you guys to understand the best way to use Auggie, and then trying to sort of roll that out to our larger engineering org. And then in terms of toil reduction, I think that one thing I heard is only 20% of a developer's time is spent actually writing code. And so if you can affect that other 80%, obviously that has, opportunity for high leverage. And so, again, we're working with Augment to try to figure out how to best utilize its capabilities to affect, that other 80% as well.
How do you think about adoption today at Rubrik with AI for code? And can you talk a little bit about what your aspirations are there as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think adoption we're already there. I mean, we're basically at 100%. Most folks use it on a daily basis. I think really it's more now about how do we most efficiently or effectively use it, such that everyone's getting these efficiency gains of our most productive developers. We have internal enablement programs, and Augment is now a part of that, where we're actually going out and trying to make sure that every single developer at Rubrik knows how to use Augment and the latest features and latest techniques. So we're continuing to focus on that. Again, I think it's really about just sort of identifying the best practices and making sure that we can roll them out effectively to our team.
I want to go back to what you said a few questions ago. Around 20% of the time of a developer is actually writing code. The other 80% is something that you and the team are looking to bring gains, productivity gains to, or reduce toil. Can you talk a little bit about where automation fits into that picture? You mentioned agent personas. How do you think about how to prioritize automation and helping accelerate developer productivity and addressing that 80%?
Toil is maybe the perfect word for that, where it's a lot of sort of grunt work, right? Sifting through logs, trying to, correlate, different, you're looking at 5 screens, you're trying to draw conclusions from the 5 of them. And I think that's the thing that's really, really ripe for automation, where, again, just sort of grunt work that takes time, but the human's not adding that much value, right? And I think, again, that's totally ripe for automation. I would say the sort of the framework we look at it through is if I am doing this thing, am I as a human really necessary to do it? And if the answer is no, or maybe not, then we try to find how can we automate that. I think agents are the perfect tool for a lot of these situations. And so really it's we want to sort of up level the human, where the human is doing the things that the agents can't do today, which is somehow, bringing, tribal knowledge or intuition that an agent may not necessarily have. Whereas the sort of mechanical bits of scraping logs or running diagnostic commands, there's no reason a human should be doing these things.
Again, I want to come back to the comment around the aspirations for productivity for your teams and for individuals at Rubrik. Can you give us some perspective on what role Augment's playing today in helping address the toil or helping with productivity?
Yeah, I think one really interesting thing, or one anecdote I'll say, is that we started using Augment. Obviously, people are using it to write code. Then we sort of discover that Auggie and agents in general are sort of more generally applicable. They can do all sorts of different things. So if you give them the right tools and the right context. And so we invented a system internally where we could say, Auggie become a triager, and then it would go search our code base for the appropriate system prompt. a prompt and try to install that, and Auggie would adopt this persona. And so we had a couple of these, we had a code review one, we had a triage one, like you guys are already focusing on this. Other teams sort of took it and organically ran with it, where we now have I'd say 100 different prompts that have been contributed by various folks around Rubrik, for very bespoke use cases. Maybe a team likes to do things a certain way. Even our release manager now is like an expert in sort of writing prompts and giving the Auggie so he can manage the release. It's all about reducing toil, where he's got to go scrape through a bunch of Jiras, make sure that things are updated, ping certain people. And now he does that all in automated fashion through Auggie. Again, not a use case you would think of when, Augment's a coding agent, but no, it's actually a more general purpose agent, which given the right context and the right instructions can actually do a lot more.
So general purpose agent, I'm curious, any ambition or aspiration to bring Auggie to other roles outside of engineering?
We actually have roles outside of engineering, like installing IDs just so they can get access to Augment. So for example, I believe now a good portion of our support org, although they're not coders, can use Auggie to help them understand a specific stack trace or maybe potential remediations for a problem by just using the context engine to inspect the code. And so again, I think that, Auggie is of course an agent, general purpose, but with that context engine actually opens up new use cases that weren't necessarily possible before.
Yeah, I love it. And there's a lot that we're learning from you guys with how you're using Auggie in some of these scenarios, some of the things you just shared. We'd love to figure out how to share that with our customers too. Everyone's on this journey trying to figure out how to use Auggie and how to use AI to automate processes, beyond just the developers and engineering team. This is really fun, man. I really appreciate you coming in and joining us here. This is the first of what's going to be many of these types of conversations in the future, but really fun having you here, and we're appreciative of you as a great champion for us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.